Hey, this is Pam Perry, and I am so excited about this particular episode with Catrice Jackson, Catriceology. And this is something that, backstory, I knew Catrice 10 years ago. And during COVID-19, that sort of thing, I started going through a lot of books, and I was sharing particular books that I really love with other people. And so this one particular book I pulled out called Delicious. I said, oh, I remember this book. I said, I'm gonna reread this book. I like this book because I like Catrice. I was like, I wonder what she's doing. And I just remember Catrice was just always on point. It's called Delicious, The Savvy Woman's Guide to Living a Sweet, Sassy, and Satisfied Life. Cute little picture on the cover with these red shoes. And I said, I wonder what she's doing. So now this book came out in 2010. Hadn't really been following her, didn't know what was really going on. And let me tell you, and this was a month ago, Catrice. So this was even before Ahmaud Arbery. It was before George Floyd. It was before the woman in Central Park. It was, the little Karen. It was before all that. And so when I got on your site, I was like, it was really amazing. So go to Catriceology.com. I want everybody to do that for sure. Go to Catriceology.com. And one of the things that you will find when you go there, well, first of all, let me tell you about her link tree before we get anything. So Catrice is amazing. I'm going to just say you that. But she has a podcast, an anti-racism podcast, special episode. She just got back from Minneapolis. She has an article here, 7 reasons why people should not lead educational sessions on workshops on racism and anti-Blackness. I mean, so I'm going all this and I'm like, what happened to the delicious life? I said, what is, and so I'm looking at it, and she has this workshop that's coming out called She Talk, We Talk. Mm-hmm. And I read and I said, oh my God. And I watched the video, and she basically is teaching white women about how to really take a deep, honest, truthful dive into the issues of race, racism, whiteness, white supremacy, and anti-Blackness. This was something that she didn't just start like just recently. This is something, like I said, I ran into this a month ago. So for her to be on this episode with me right now, I know she's busy as all get out because of what's going on in the world, besides COVID and what's been happening with all the protests going on around the world. So Catrice, welcome. And tell me the pivot of when this happened. Besides, I love your hair too, as well. Okay.
Well, thank you so much for having me on. It's been a long time since we connected.
A decade.
And I didn't even know that you had that book. I forgot all about that. So thank you for that. And you know what? Hey, life is still delicious. It's just a different flavor right now. That's all.
I love it.
In fact,
you got to tell me how the pivot and when the change happened from the Catrice that I knew a decade ago. We were all in the same space of branding, and always the whole, I guess you would say, always on the cutting edge of technology. Yeah. That's been like your thing, because you were always teaching, blogging. You were blogging way back then, it's like way back then. And so tell me how it happened. What was the pivot and change? Because you've always been a speaker too. So
yeah. Well, the pivot is very clear for me. I had left Omaha, which is where I'm currently at now, and moved to Dallas with the intent to start fresh. And I have one son who's now 28.
Wow.
And the plan was always for him to come, but we knew that we were going to have to, stay with some folks, and I just didn't want him in that situation. So I'm like, you know what, son, we're going to go, we're going to get set up. And, well, you know how I am. It's not going to take longer than 2 weeks for us to find something. Well, in the meantime, we found a place, and, he about crushed my heart. Well, he did crush my heart, because I kept saying, you ready? We got a place. You coming? I'm coming to get you. And he's like, Mom, I want to stay here. And I was like, what? No. We as parents aren't, we're not supposed to leave our children, so to speak. It's them who leaves us. But at that time, that's when the murder of Trayvon Martin happened. And so my
Oh,
son would have been about 18 at the time.
mm-hmm,
And
mm-hmm.
just the thought of him potentially being Trayvon was really the turning point. I had always kind of been doing, some diversity and inclusion kind of work as an employee. Specifically, I worked at the YWCA here in Omaha with their mission that is eliminating racism, empowering women, and I was actually the racial justice director. So the work, it really hasn't been foreign to me. It's always been what I knew I should be doing, but because it's difficult, emotionally draining, frustrating work, I've avoided it. I avoided it for a long time. And when that happened to Trayvon, that was my wake up call. When I decided, you know what, I can't run from this anymore. I have to do something. And so it took me about 3 years to figure out what that was going to look like and how I was going to specifically choose to show up in the world to do this work. And since 2015, that's what I've been doing. And I have no intentions on changing courses.
Wow. So you've been doing this since 2015.
Yeah.
Okay. And so tell me, let's go back real quick. What was it like when you came back from Minneapolis?
Oh gosh. Well, you know what? It's interesting that I'm involved with the work in Minneapolis. There was a post on Facebook. I had been to Minneapolis prior to really getting involved there to do one of my She Talks, We Talk workshops, and connected with some, folks in the community as well as some white women who had participated in the workshop. And they were like, do you know Nakima Levy Armstrong? And I'm like, no, I have no idea who that is. And they were like, okay, I'm going to make a connection. So there was a post put out by Nakima, and she was really just calling white women out, a straight up call that says, we are tired of you sitting in the shadows. We are sick of you watching this happen in what's called Minnesota Nice. And I'm putting you all on blast that you either need to show up or shut up, essentially is what the message was. And I got tagged into that post. And I said, whatever you need, sis, I got you. And she said, can you please come and do a workshop here? And I usually don't travel to do workshops in the winter, especially not to Minnesota. But I could feel the urgency. So I went and I did that workshop. She opened up her space to me. And that was 3 years ago. And I know that there is a special kind of work for me to do there. It was meant for me to do that work with Nakima specifically. And I've been going and going every year, 3, 4, 5 times a year to that city because I believe God has called me to that city to do this work. And so when the news broke and I heard about what happened to George Floyd in the city in the midst of COVID,
right?
I didn't even think about being infected. I didn't think about being afraid. I didn't think about anything. God said, you need to go. Oh. And I packed a bag, and me and my husband drove to try to eliminate, some potential infection of, not being on a plane. And we drove. We stayed there for 5 days. We participated in the marches and the rallies and the protests that were organized by Black women. When the march left the state capitol in St. Paul, and we shut down the freeway, we essentially occupied it and shut down the freeway for about an hour and marched back to the state capitol. That was all orchestrated, led, planned, and designed by Black women in the Twin Cities. And I was grateful to be a part of that team.
This is what they call such a time as this for you. Okay. This is real. I mean, literally, I'm almost in tears because I knew you back then. And of course, you were at the YMCA and you were doing that, the YWCA, and you were doing that kind of work. But this work that you're doing right now, please tell us all that you're doing, because it's so, your post, okay, your post is like, bye, Becky, if you don't get it. I mean, I'm like, this is a woman on fire for this work. It's your calling.
Yes.
It's your calling.
Yes.
And I'm like in tears because I want to know how people can support you, but tell them exactly all that you do.
So yes, it's definitely divine work. I move by spirit. I listen to my creator, and there's a lot of noise around me that says, Catrice, you're too direct. You're too harsh. You should, be nicer to white folks. And spirit says there's no time to waste. It's urgency now. Black people are dying, and we don't got time for sugarcoating and coddling. And so, primarily my work is, it's twofold. There's half of my work that's very strategically focused on
Training.
Training and workshops specifically for white women, because as far as I'm concerned, when we think about white supremacy, when we think about, which I don't like to call it that, I call it white terrorism, because that's exactly what it is. There's nothing supreme about what the collective white folk have done to Black bodies in this country. And so my workshops are designed for white women because I believe that they are the fuel that feeds the beast that hunts us. It is white women who continue to breed white terrorists. Mm-hmm. It is white women who coddle white men who do these horrific things and who have done these horrific things for centuries. It's white women who are silent. It's white women who 53% of them voted for number 45, which is the reason that we're in this shit show right now. Mm-hmm. So, the way that I think about that is that, when I think about the beast that hunts us, AKA white terrorism, it can't move its head without the neck.
And they're the neck.
And white women are the neck. And so I'm going straight to the jugular, going straight to white women. And essentially,
and they show up for these events. I mean, you're basically like calling them out, but you're educating them. Their eyes are open, but you do not sugarcoat anything. Mm-hmm. I saw a video where the white women were like, thank you, Catrice, for letting us know. I mean, the woman in Central Park who just, basically, it was two. I guess you put another article out on your site about the other woman, Black woman, who was just like sitting in the park in New York, and the woman was like, no, you need to go. And she said she was playing, that the other lady was playing the black card.
Yeah.
And they're like, what? And then the other one where the woman just was like, the guy was bird watching. Mm-hmm. And so you see the white men, the two white men that killed Ahmaud Arbery, but then you're saying that it's really the women that you're focusing on to really make the change. To really help make the change in the
Absolutely. Because they need to become disruptors of white terrorism. They need to become the infiltrators. And they have been riding under the radar, if you will, where when we think about collectively what has happened to Black people in terms of racism in this country, you don't find white women in the history books. It's not white women that we think about instantly when we think about the terrorism that Black folks have experienced in this country since 1619. And so my question has been always, where were they? Where have they been? Mm-hmm. What were they doing? Mm-hmm. And essentially what they were doing was, coddling Black men, white men, nourishing them, protecting them, raising their children. And so they've been complicit the whole time, and nobody has really challenged that. And so my workshop, She Talks, We Talk, Race Talks for Women, that's a 2-day weekend workshop. They come in with their notepad and they're ready to take notes. And I tell them instantly, put it away. You're not even going to be able to catch your breath to take notes.
Right. I can see that.
Yeah, this is not that kind of workshop. You are going to be full body participating here. You're not even going to be able to comprehend. You're not even going to be able to put together a good sentence to put on that paper. So just put it away and just let's get busy.
And you tell them that it's not about them. What do you mean by that?
So, the reason that I do this work, I think a lot of white people get confused, and maybe even some Black and brown folks get confused. My intention with this work is that that white women will wake up to their own racism that they would go down into what I call the dungeon of their soul and dig up all that racism and anti-Blackness, bring it upstairs, put it on the table, look at it, examine it, pick it apart, and then begin to eradicate it, begin to get rid of it, and then learn some new skills on how they can be less violent, less harmful, more nourishing to Black women specifically.
How are they violent? Explain how white women are violent.
Okay, can I finish this real quick? And so I know that by doing this work, when they get this work and they stay on the journey to allyship, quote unquote, then when they go out into the world and engage with Black women, they do less harm because of it. So I know that this is helping Black and brown women that I'll never meet in my lifetime. And I have seen that manifested through the white women who participate in all of the events in Minneapolis. I go there still, I show up, I see them doing the work, embodying the work. I see them acting out as effective allies. And the Black women that they engage with tell me all the time, Catrice, that makes a world of difference. They are totally different women. And we can tell which women have been to your workshops and which women haven't. So what they do is what I call weapons of whiteness.
Yeah, that's what I want you to explain that term, because I was like, weapons of, I've never heard that.
Yeah. Weapons of whiteness are intentional, unintentional, conscious, unconscious thoughts, behaviors, actions, ways of being, ways of showing up that white women do that cause harm to Black and brown people, to Black and brown bodies. Oftentimes they are doing these things and they don't know they're doing these things. And then there are times when it's very intentional and they know exactly what they're doing. Like the lady who called the police on the guy bird watching. She put that fear in her voice and that fragile white woman costume on and said, I'm going to tell the police that an African-American man is threatening me. She knew what she was doing. That wasn't an accident. That was very intentional. And so some of the weapons are white centering, which means that white women will center themselves in everything, all the time, everywhere, all day, 24/7, 365. That is actually the number one weapon that white women use, is centering. They make it all about them. They want to be coddled. They want to be heard. They want to be seen. They want to have the microphone.
Is that where like the white feminism movement arose, you think? Okay.
Yes, completely white centering, completely. And there are a lot of difficulties behind the scenes because white women refuse to step away from the platform and give the mic to somebody else. They just could not be at the center of it all. Some other weapons are, of course, white fragility, and that is the inability to talk about race or engage in discussions around racism without becoming emotional, frustrated, tired, exhausted, and oftentimes they will lash out because of that fragility. Now, that's Robin DiAngelo's term. I don't think it's accurate. I'm actually writing about that in the new book that's coming out called Weapons of Whiteness.
Weapons of Whiteness.
Yeah. White women are not fragile at all. They're violent and treacherous, period. And there's a lot of ways in which they do that.
This is a conference you have called She Talk, We Talk, and white women come and pay and hear you say this.
Yes.
This is amazing to me.
Yes.
You know, it's amazing. It's just like, it's like it's like they come transformed, but going in, they have to feel some trepidation that.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
There are times, Pam, when white women come to the workshop and they don't come back after the first break.
Oh, wow.
There's some that go to lunch and don't come back. There's some that don't come back the second day.
Wow.
Because it's too emotionally real and they can't hide.
And you've been having these conversations since 2015, doing this type of work.
Yeah.
So do you think because of what's happening now, I mean, I did a protest last Saturday and I was telling people, I said, I've never been in a protest literally, because, I was so little in the 60s, and I haven't done any protests of that magnitude, that part of this, and it felt like a parade. And I was like the only Black person there, and it was so nice. And not that it had to be violent or anything, but it was just a whole different kind of feel. And I think they are hungry for some kind of change, something to happen. So your workshop is something that you can serve up, and I can tell people about it. And you have one in July. You have one in July in Minneapolis.
Yeah.
And one in New Orleans.
We have one in New Orleans, we have one in Seattle, and one in Brooklyn. I did have to cancel like the first 4 at the beginning of the year due to the virus. Yeah. But I go to at least 8 to 10 cities every year. So I'm usually traveling like, once a month for sure, to host these workshops. And every year, white women keep showing up. And one of the things that I can say is that the white women who show up for the full 2 days, they literally leave transformed. It is a visceral experience. It's not an intellectual thing. I started to notice that they look different. So when I went to LA last year, I invited some people to come and capture that. And so we took pictures of them before it started. We took pictures of them after day 1. We took pictures of them when they came back for day 2, and then again at the end of day 2. By the end of day 1, they came in and they were smiling and they were ready to learn and all bright.
Bright and perky.
Yeah, bright and perky. And then after the end of day 1, exhausted, tired, worn out, psychologically just dismayed, like mind blown. And usually when they come back the second day, I ask them, so how did you sleep last night? And most of them say I didn't. So what I'm doing, one of the ways that I describe it is that it's almost like brain surgery. Like I am with precision going into a place in their brain and opening it up and putting my finger on where that cognitive dissonance is. And when I mean cognitive dissonance, I mean this idea that I'm not racist, I'm a good person. And I go to that spot and say, no, here it is right here. And every time I go in, I'm trying to extract another piece of that dissonance so that they will have this cognitive wake up, if you will, that they are in fact racist and that there's no such thing as a good white person. Now, there is a such thing as white people who do good things.
Right.
And that's as good as that's going to get. And I tell them it's not going to get any better than that. So if you're striving to be a good one, then you're moving in the wrong direction and you're actually seeking something that doesn't exist. And I say that because name a time in history, Pam, when we think about the collective white folks, that they've ever been collectively good to Black people, collectively good to brown people, collectively good to...
Not collectively. I mean, there's been a few where they have, like, I would think of like Gloria Steinem maybe in that whole movement, and it's like, we're going to bring in our Black sisters, but they weren't leaders of that movement.
Absolutely.
Just like, you're here to help us with our voice.
Absolutely. Yeah.
So,
yeah. Right.
yeah.
And so there's never been a time. And so there's no such thing. So my work is to help white women specifically own their racism, name it, claim it, and work to do less harm. That is the best that they can do, is to do less harm. Now, I have some white folks in a collective who are usually alumni who stay with me after the workshop because they want to stay on the journey.
Wow.
So I have a group of white women. There's probably, I don't know, there's probably about 50 or so in there. They stay on the journey. It's a year commitment. So they pay a membership fee for a year. They stay on the journey, and I'm willing to teach them more because they're willing to pay me to teach them. I don't teach white folks for free at all in any kind of capacity.
And you can't teach them everything they need to know in 2 days anyway.
Absolutely.
I mean, it's been their whole life. It's systemic. So
Absolutely. So, you know, these women who stay with me, I can see that they are different people, that they are less harmful, that they are more supportive, that they are more nourishing. I actually watched, I don't know, 5 or 6 white women who were assigned roles for the protest in Minneapolis for George Floyd. They took on roles such as security, putting their bodies on the line, interrupting, disrupting, you know, gathering materials, making sure there's food. I mean, whatever role they were given to do at the march. And I specifically watched all of them when they were in my presence to see how they were engaging with the Black women who were leading it. And I have to say, it was completely 100% violent free.
wow.
No weapons
That
of
is
whiteness used. They knew their role. They knew to back up and let Black women lead and to do it in a way that didn't cause harm.
So the other day, that's good. There was the other day where I saw a young lady, she was 22 years old, I believe, had Merriam-Webster dictionary redefine racism. And the first definition was like, oh, okay, you know, you kind of get it. And it's like people who are prejudiced, whatever, whatever. But she said no. And I believe she was from, I want to say she was from Iowa, Oklahoma. I'm not sure. I'm not really sure. Her name was Kennedy. And she had them add the word systemic in the word about talking about racism. Because she felt that it's not that people think, like what you said, that they're not racist, but there's things around them that show the racism because of the system of that they're living in.
Absolutely.
And she had them change that. She said she sent an email and got an email back and they added it in there. She was like, for this girl, her name is Kennedy. And I think Don Lemon on CNN says, you know, you're going to go down in history as a woman that helped change the definition of racism.
That's right.
In the
That's
dictionary.
right.
Black
That's
girl.
Right.
Black girl.
I saw the article, but I didn't get a chance to open it up and look at it. And I was like,
she is so, you just want to just hug her. She's 22 years old. My daughter's like 24. And I was like, oh my God. I said, these kids are a lot smarter than they really give them credit for. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
And so I had got this thing yesterday, Catrice. It was called Mapping Our Roles in a Social Change Ecosystem. And the story was, I got it from Amy Porterfield. And she's an internet marketer. She's a podcaster. And she sent out this map about this ecosystem, whatever. And she was going to go over this in her Facebook group live and teach people basically about Black Lives Matter and how we can eradicate racism. Exactly.
Interesting.
So actually I looked at the email, I said, very interesting. And so and that's all I said. I was like, man, I'm getting some crazy emails from white people about let's Black Lives Matter, let's eradicate racism.
Yeah.
So a few hours later, she sent out an email. She says, I have canceled my Facebook Live. I'll let you know why.
Exactly.
In a few days. So the next day she lets you know why she canceled it. And basically she says, I'm sorry that I jumped on the opportunity of list building and put this in here with Black Lives Matter. It's like I'm pimping the whole movement.
That's right.
And I'm not a teacher, and it never been in that, and was so humbling. And I said, did Catrice get to her?
I must not be on. I'm not on her list.
I was like, it was like someone talked to her, and she said, I appreciate the people who pointed out my error. And that's the kind of thing that we're seeing right now, Catrice, where people are saying, I'm sorry. The same thing happened to Russell Brunson. He's ClickFunnels guy. So he came out, and then just, you know, my girl Ty Goodwin, she used to live in Minneapolis as well. And Ty called him out and said, listen, because he came on and says, well, you know, George Floyd was killed. I had no idea all this was going on right now. I haven't been keeping up with the news. I didn't know. And he just kept saying, like, I didn't know. And Ty went in and said, let me tell you. So she listed all of the people that had been killed from Trayvon, because he was there in Ferguson when Trayvon was killed. So that was in 2014 or so.
Yeah, yeah.
And then this is 20, and then 6 years, you don't know any Black people that have been killed since then. You don't, I mean, Eric Gardner, Mike Brown, nothing. So she went off on him. He was trying to get people to give him stories that he can put together, a documentary, so he could raise money to give to the Black Lives Matter movement. He says, and I want to curate your stories and this and that. And my whole thing was like, we got people that can curate stories. You want to give $250,000, give it to Spike Lee and let him curate the story.
That's right.
Or give it to Catrice and let her curate the stories, because we already out here doing the work.
That's
but you want to just like be in control. I'm gonna curate your stories. And so he took the video down. Took it down.
As he should. And
they heard nothing else about whatever he gonna do. And I was like, well, what happened to $250,000 he was gonna give away to put together this documentary?
Oh, that came with conditions. He wanted to center himself. That's always the agenda. That was Amy's agenda. She wanted to be centered. She wanted to be seen as one of the good ones, one of the leaders. And, we see right through that bullshit. Yes, and that's exactly what it is.
and that's exactly, so we know it. It's kind of like, as Black people, we know it, we see it. Mm-hmm. But as a 60-year-old woman seeing this happening today, my head is turning around, and I have never seen anything like this. Yeah, where there's such a humbling, I'm sorry, what do I need to do to fix it? And so you have, tell them about your books, because I want them to get the old books, because you got a new book coming out as well.
So actually, Pam, this will be my 11th book. So wow. I've written several books after that delicious book that you have. Okay. And, and I started on the kind of self-help, motivational, empowerment kind of stuff. Yeah. I wrote a couple branding books, but my first book, Antagonists, Advocates, and Allies, was the first book that I wrote for white women. And it's essentially that. It breaks down whether you are being an antagonist, an advocate who's on the fence, kind of waffling, or if you are really, truly doing the work of an ally. And so it describes all three, and it tells you how to move from one phase to the next, to the next, to the next.
I love that. Now, what is your degree? Is actually, you have 2 degrees. I saw a lot of letters behind your name. So I was like, I don't even know what that is. I just like her. So what are they? What is the licensed practical?
So I have my bachelor's in criminal justice, my master's in counseling, and that affords me to be a licensed mental health professional, LMHP, and a licensed professional counselor. I've also completed all the coursework for my PhD in clinical psychology, but that I got to write that paper, so
that's the next book probably after this one. So yeah. Oh, that is, congratulations.
Thank you. Yeah, it's coming.
Oh my God. So criminal justice was really the you picked that as the major. Mm-hmm. I would have never thought that, because like I said, when we were on the space, you were in the technology, blogging, branding, all of that. But in your heart, you kind of went full circle back to like criminal justice, racial justice.
Yeah, I essentially just answered the call. And I'm sure you can relate to this. Like when you start off as an entrepreneur, you're really just sometimes you're just trying to see what sticks, you're trying to find your footage. You got this idea, you got several ideas. And so I'll be the first one to admit that I was just really trying to figure it out. I was trying to figure it out, but avoiding the call at the same time. So my friends who know me, from way back to middle school, high school, definitely. And, my young adult friends, it doesn't surprise them that I'm doing this work right now, because my eye for justice and racism has always been there. And so I've always had issue, if you will, with white folks and the things that they do. I just didn't have the language to name it. Mm-hmm. I didn't always understand what it was, but I always could feel when it was happening to me. And I think that's why it's important for me to create this list of weapons of whiteness, not only for white folks to know specifically what they're doing to cause harm, but for us to be able to put our finger on
and put a language to it.
Yeah, put a language to the experiences that we have been having in this country since day one. You got to get the Becky code.
The Becky code?
I got to send you the Becky code.
Okay. All right. That one sounds like a good one. Now, one of the things too, when you said your friends knew way back when that Catrice would be doing this type of work.
They called
around
me
the
Sister
country.
Soldier in high school.
Then yeah, so that for sure. So one of the things that was always something that I did was like gather together African Americans for a common cause. So say for instance, when I was in college, there was uh, the Journalist Society, but then I always felt like the African Americans were left out. And it's always around professional things. So it's always felt like, okay, we need to gather ourselves together and do Black journalists. So I brought the Black journalists on campus, or the National Association of Media Women, or the National Negro, whatever. It was always those kind of organizations. And then also too, even with Christian writers, you would think, okay, well, everybody's all on the same page, everybody's Christian, but no, I would go to some of the Christian conferences and it would be like just different. And so we did American Christian Writers in Detroit was primarily African American. Whites could have came, but they didn't because they had different issues going on. And then BART, also too, Blacks in Advertising, Radio, and Television. In my professional career, I started that because I felt that the ones that were in advertising were really, really racist. And then we as Blacks need to come together and help each other and support each other. Now, we did go and get money from them and say, okay, you support our events. We have a career conference, we have this, and we would go to the radio and TV and all the ad agencies and say, okay, whatever, you're racist, we know you're racist, but fund our stuff so we can do what we need to do. Same thing with Speakers Magazine. It's for African American speakers. There's a National Speakers Association, but very rarely do they have African Americans involved in a leadership capacity, or even a way that I feel is authentic.
Yes.
I mean, they'll have one and they'll use them as their trophy. Yeah. It's like that's not enough. So that's that. And I realize that I do that a lot, and I'll go to the white organizations, clubs, whatever, and then find like, this is not right. And then I would start the African American version of that. So my family calls me Pam X. It's like, she's a Pam X. And I'm like, you know, and it's so funny because I never realized that's what I do, because I'm so pro-Black, but I'm not anti-white.
Absolutely.
So I didn't ever feel like it was nothing wrong with being pro-Black. And that's like what you should be if we're going to overcome. So anyway, that's why I loved your stuff. Okay. That's why I loved your stuff. And I was like, okay, Catriceology.com. And I love how that is, because it's like, it's your own recipe or your own process. And it's what people, the medicine that they're taking when they come to your workshop.
Strong medicine.
Strong medicine. And they're there coming back and making changes. So you said in Minneapolis, they're actually on the ground, really helping with the work. And that's the only way. I had Dr. Herbert Harris on the other day talking about this. He says, this is when change is really going to happen, when we all come together. But you're pulling up at the root.
Yes.
Okay, they can come together and not just be good people, but you're pulling up the root, so there's real transformation.
Yeah. Because oftentimes, as you already know, like, you know, when white women do come to our spaces, or we're in their spaces that are predominantly white, there's always something. There's a slight, there's a comment, there's there's always some type of insidious, violent thing happening. And then we walk away and say, did she really just do that? Did that really just happen to me? And so we can't even go into these spaces without being, emotionally or psychologically harmed with these weapons of whiteness. And so, one of the things I did, I hosted my Follow Black Women conference in Minneapolis last year. And as I got up to the microphone and, was getting ready to open it up, I looked around the room and I saw a lot of white women at the front, sitting in the front tables. And I was like, listen, we about to start this thing right. If you are a white woman, I need you to get your stuff, gather it, and get to the back of the room. This is the Follow Black Women Conference. How dare you have the audacity to take up space at the front of the room? Move. And the whole room turned around and looked and shifted, and those white women got in place, and they sat there and they stayed and they did what was required of them. And that is just one tiny example of the shift that needs to happen. White women need to stop trying to take up all the space. They need to quit trying to hold the mic and run the show. Because here we are at a Follow Black Women's Conference. You're lucky to even be here because it really is for us. You're
Right,
just here
right.
to
You
observe.
even said that on the website. You did say that.
Yeah, it's not for you, but you can come and learn from this
Right,
experience.
right.
And
But they were
so,
stood in the front. But yeah, that's just, I remember Breonna Payton, she went to Princeton, she went to high school with my daughter. She wrote an article at Princeton about white privilege.
mhm.
And it was something to the fact that, yes, you are white privileged, and I'm explaining to you what it is. And then Breonna, I think that article actually got reprinted in Time, and she was, at that time, she was 20 years old.
Mm-hmm.
And she's working in the civil rights office in New York City or something like that. But you can tell, I mean, in high school, she was like this.
Yeah.
Okay, she went to a primarily white high school, but just a proud Black woman, girl, with her braids, standing tall. I'm going to Princeton, and I'm going to call you out. That's at 18 years old. I'm like,
Yeah.
this boldness. I
That's
love
what's
it.
up,
I love
though.
it. But that's just a calling on her life, just generally. And
Yep.
for such a time as this, because
Yep.
there's going to be there's a shift going on. There's a
Mhm.
major shift. You've been seeing it. You've been on the front line of it. But this major shift, what you see different now, is not just, you know, in your 8 cities, but you're going to have to like duplicate yourself and go to like 30 cities. You know what I'm saying? It's like, you need to, what's the word? Certify other people in the Catriceology.
Yeah. Well, you know what? People ask me that all the time. And I finally have come to a decision about that. I won't do that. Unfortunately, it may have to die with me. And the reason I say that is
But your books will
because
be here.
my books will be here, but nobody can deliver that in the way that I deliver it. However, now that I have a new granddaughter, who's not even a month old yet, she will carry that torch. So I'm not going to certify. I'm not going to train.
Yeah.
I'm going to train her. She's going to carry the torch.
Yeah, that's it. That's good. It's a daughter.
Yeah.
That's good. What was that? I just saw Self-Made, where it was it the granddaughter of Madam C.J. Walker that basically was, she was doing that. And actually, I think she was like the adopted granddaughter.
She was.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
That was kind of it. So, you know, we've been talking now for about an hour now, and I have not gotten everything that I want to ask you, but we can still continue the conversation even though we're reconnecting everything. Explain to me really quickly about this whole area of diversity inclusion and how HR professionals.
Go ahead, Pam. Go ahead.
Diversity and inclusion. How is that? That's always, if you go to any corporate America, you're going to find, where's the Black people at? Oh, they're in the diversity and inclusion office. So what is their job supposed to be right now? And I'm going to let that be the last one to let you kind of wrap up.
You gave me a loaded question for the end, didn't you?
Because I see it all the time. I'm like, what is diversity and inclusion? And why that got to come together with all the other stuff? Why can't it be about Black people? That's what it started out as. But anyway.
Yeah. Well, you know what? It's smoke and mirrors.
Call it out.
Diversity and inclusion is smoke and mirrors. I don't believe in it as the first step. I think that down the road, something like that can be helpful within organizations. I get lots of calls for people saying, Catrice, can you come and do something around diversity and inclusion? And I just straight up say, no, that's not what I do. That's not who I am. And actually, I think that's a setup for Black and brown folks and organizations. It's a temporary Band-Aid. It's not going to work. I'm not the one that you want to come do that. Now, on the other hand, if you want anti-racism training and you want to call a thing, because you don't have a diversity and inclusion problem, you have a racism and exclusion problem. And so if you're not going to solve that, then the rest of this is just a waste of money. It's a waste of time. It's a waste of energy. And I believe it really sets Black and brown folks up, especially Black folks up for failure. So I don't believe in it. And I used to do some of that. But as I've woken up, you know, in my own journey of unlearning white supremacy and unlearning anti-Blackness, I will not go do that work. If people want to do it, that's, that's on them. I don't support it. I think
Yeah,
that, yeah,
that's
I
what I
think,
want.
yeah, I think companies need to stop with that bullshit. I think they need to stop dancing around the issues and just go ahead and put their finger on it that they have a racism problem.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
But they don't want to do that because
It makes everybody uncomfortable.
well, the main reason white folks don't want to do anti-racism training in organizations is because then they will have to examine their own racism and they're afraid to do it.
Mm.
So they would rather Black and brown folks be affected and harmed repeatedly in their organization versus looking at their own racism and doing the right thing. It's
Wow.
purely selfish.
Wow. It's the same thing with cultural sensitivity training.
Yes, I don't do that shit anymore either.
I was gonna say those are probably about in the same. And that
I don't even do implicit bias training. It's all garbage. And I hate to say that.
because they don't get to the root of it.
Nope.
You're saying.
It does. You don't. And it allows white folks to feel like they're good white folks and that they're not racist, which is so far from the truth. All white people are racist.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
That's a hard pill to swallow. But change isn't.
That's why that little girl changed that definition. That's why that little girl changed that definition in the dictionary.
Exactly.
She's 22 and she knew.
Exactly.
She's like, no, this is you don't have to be racist in order to understand this definition that it's systemic.
That's
and then
right.
it's just you don't even know it.
That's right.
Yeah.
So yeah, and then I've been getting calls like crazy and emails like crazy since coming back from Minneapolis. Catrice, our company needs anti-racism training, and then when I spell out to them, this is what I do and this is what you need. Oh well, maybe I don't know if that's in our budget, or we just kind of wanted a one-on-one thing. And I have just straight up been telling people that I'm not the one. You need to go find somebody else. I will not come do that.
Yeah, because it takes more than just one time.
Yes, especially when I go in and say all white people are racist.
Yeah, you can't leave them there and it's like, well, she was only here for an hour. What did you get out of it? I didn't get anything. Because it takes for them to unpack that and get their head around it. You've got to do the work.
It takes systematic change, and that's not going to happen in one workshop. So I'm not going to go in there and blow it up with the truth and leave my Black and brown sisters and brothers, fighting through the collateral damage to get a paycheck. Because now they're vulnerable, because really what's going to happen, and it's already happened at one place that I went to, what's going to happen is that Black folks are going to be in there like, yup, she's right, yup. And then there's going to be no more work done around it. And now the Black folks in the organization are going to be targeted. And they're going to suffer.
Right.
Because white folks are going to be pissy and mad because they had to hear the truth. And so now I've just opened up a wound that can't be closed up, and Black and brown folks are going to be harmed, and I'm not willing to participate in that. If they get somebody else to do it, I don't agree with it, but I'm not willing to go into an organization and do that.
I can get it. It's like you would go to a workshop, you agree with everything you're saying, they see you agreeing, you leave, and then it's like somebody now is quote unquote bullying you because you agreed to what she was saying. So you must believe that too. Yes, they believe that too, but she was the one that was saying it, but you didn't let her finish the work.
Right.
So they could actually pull it all out of them. So that
actually this organization that I'm speaking of now, because of all that's going on with murder after murder, the Black staff who are in that organization, they're now wanting me to come back to do some debriefing and healing work with them because they're traumatized. Mm-hmm. But no, you didn't listen to me when I told you this cannot be a one-time thing. And, I wouldn't have did that, Pam, but the leader of the organization agreed that it would be ongoing. And then after they got the truth, the way I deliver it, then she decided not to continue with the work. And here we are a year later. Yeah.
It's like those workshops. You said, well, like at the break, they don't come back because it was too hard to hear the truth. And it's like, no, it's a 2-day workshop. You left at the hour break and never came back. So it's kind of like what she did. It's like, I
She
agree,
left
let's
at
do
the
it.
hour
But then,
break.
yeah.
But listen to this though. Listen to how pathetic that is. And I use that word on purpose. It is highly pathetic that white folks are so afraid and scared to talk about racism. But Black people experience it on the daily and we die from it every day. But white people can't have a conversation. They can't go to a workshop or a training. How pitiful and
Right.
apathetic is that they can't even talk about it? And that's very telling. Because what's going to happen? What's going to happen if you have a
That
conversation?
is true. I mean, it's not like you're going to have them come to the workshop and then at the end of the workshop, we're going to line you up and we're going to kill you.
Right.
No, we just want to have a conversation. Black people are dying all the time from this virus. I guess it's the virus of racism. It's
Absolutely.
really, but you don't want to talk about it. Ooh, girl, your website, just your website alone, people will learn. Your link tree alone on your Instagram. So I want to ask you this. So why, I'm trying to follow you. So remember, we have been connected in a decade or so. I'm trying to follow you on Twitter and Instagram. Why is everything so, have people come at you and everything is private? And, okay. See, I didn't know. And I was like, I can't, it's like it's locked. You have to, you can't just, yeah.
Yeah. I purposely have my Instagram account private, not because I'm not equipped to or able to deal with people saying whatever it is that they want to say. But white violence is very real. And, I move around the country a lot. And people can show up and they will show up and they have showed up. I have a friend who actually had to take armed security with her on her tour for that very reason.
Wow.
Because upset white folks show up, and when white folks get upset, shit happens. We see that.
Yeah.
It gets violent. So I keep as much as I can locked down, like my website. I mean, you can access that. You can go to YouTube. But where I'm actively engaging, I choose who gets to follow me. And then, the other thing is, I'll say this, there's some folks who do the work that I do that are often more about platform building than really doing on the ground, very tangible, visceral work that really changes people. And I don't care about that. I could easily open up my Instagram and probably have, 500,000 people following. But I don't care about that. I would rather have a small number of white women specifically who have committed themselves to doing the work, who are going to do the work, who are doing the work, than to just have this internet fame of people following. And so everything I do is intentional. It's strategic.
It's God-lit.
Yeah.
It's God-lit. And listen, her Instagram, if she allows you to follow her, it's very good. The post she did today, I was like, oh my God. I said, okay. And basically it was like, non-white, do not put your comments here. This is directly to Black women.
Yes.
And you wanted to know some information. So it's like, it's almost like it's part of your, like a doctoral program, basically following you. It's like following a doctoral program of like how to really eradicate, and root out racism.
Yeah, and one of the other things I wanted to share is that that other half of the work that I do is that I work towards the healing and restoration of Black women specifically. And I also work on economic justice for Black people. So I have a physical center here in Omaha called Harriet's Dream. It is a racial trauma healing and mental wellness center for Black women. And so when Black women come into this space, which no other woman can come into this space but Black women, I refuse to have it contaminated by any other. That's where we talk. That's where we heal. That's where we do art therapy, music therapy. We have discussions. We watch movies. We it's a place for Black women to be safe, to
Yeah.
come and talk about the racism that they experience, and get
And
some
this is,
healing around
yeah,
that.
this is in Nebraska,
Omaha.
Omaha. Okay.
Yeah.
They would definitely need it in Omaha.
Yeah. So, I wanted to say that because I think some people get confused that all I do is do this work with white folks. But
No,
there's
the
a,
Harriet Stream is like the big part of that.
yeah.
And
And then
Harriet,
the other piece is economic justice for Black women. So I'm raising funds. I'm doing fundraisers. I got a fundraiser going on now where I'm raising funds to help a Black woman buy a home. Um, just making sure, because economic justice has to be a part of the plan. And white
eliminating
women need to
poverty.
give up their money, their
Yeah.
time, their resources, sleep, energy, everything that they have. They need to sacrifice that. That's what true allies and accomplices do.
I like that. I like that. So
Yeah.
Harriet Stream from Harriet Tubman, correct?
Yes.
Okay. Harriet Stream.
Yeah.
Okay. So Harriet Tubman.
Here,
So people will know.
this is our one of our shirts.
Yes. Yes.
We,
1849.
that's
I
right.
like that.
I found out after I put it together that my great grandmother's name is Harriet.
Wow.
And I didn't know that.
Most people can't. I mean, Black people today, we can't even hardly go back great. I mean, that's like we didn't have records, and it's hard for us to know that. I
That was
think
my
my
ancestor.
my great, her name was Mariah, but I don't know anything after that. I don't know what was before my great grandmother. I don't.
Yeah. Well, I've been doing some of that work. I actually found the city where my family was enslaved in Tennessee. The owners of the plantation, it's still there. So
Wow.
once this COVID breaks, I'm taking a trip so I can see that.
Wow.
And I'm going to give my reparations while I'm there.
Yes, definitely. Give me my 40 acres and a mule. I'll take it
I want all this.
Yes,
Yeah,
and my 40 acres and a mule.
that's
So
right.
we didn't even talk about politics at all. Politics is a whole nother thing.
Oof.
But I do know June 19th, there's going to be some things going on in Tulsa, which is the same day as the Juneteenth, obviously. And then also, too, it's the same day that Tulsa burnt down. So
Yeah,
that was like deliberate in terms of like total slap in the face. So I don't know,
totally.
people need to stay woke. People need to know the history. I just finished, and my girlfriend told me about this, was the movie Hidden Colors. So I just saw Hidden Colors. But this whole pandemic of racism has really just made me more hungry for more information. So that's why I searched you out and wanted you on the show. Wanted to bring you to my people who follow me. I see that Tanya's watching, and Giselle's in California, Kimberly, Robin, Andrea. So if they don't know about you now they know.
Yeah.
Catriceology.com. It is something that she does a fundraising for the Harriet's Dream. I always say this: God doesn't waste anything. So everything, all your backgrounds for every single thing, from criminology to mental health to branding to writing to now getting your PhD, all of that is not wasted. It's for this.
Preparation for the destiny.
Yes. So I will be supporting you and getting
Thank
the new book. The new book is called
Weapons of Whiteness. It's going to come out in August. I want to say to Black women watching, if you get the opportunity, please get the Becky Code, because I know that you're experiencing white woman violence. And it's really, really going to help you to understand what that is and how to resist it and retain your joy. So if any Black women are watching, please get that. It's balm for the soul, for sure.
And why is it called Becky? Is it because Beyonce wrote that song, Becky with the Good Hair?
Well, because Becky goes way back to Baby Got Back.
Right. So that's what I was thinking. I was like, okay, is it that Becky?
And it's the, it's the, I don't know if it's a code word, but because they know it now, but it's the code word for, white women who do stupid shit. The calling the police, the what was it? The permit Patty and barbecue Becky and bird watching Brenda, all of that. That's just what it is. So it basically decodes her and lets you know from a psychological perspective why white women do the things that they do.
Oh, okay. I'm gonna get that. I'm gonna get it today.
Yeah, yeah.
All righty. So Catrice M. Jackson, thank you so much for coming on the Speakers Show. Want to have you featured in Speakers Magazine, so I'm going to need some information from you so you can be in our
Okay.
July issue, okay?
Yay, I
Because
would
you
love
speak
that.
around the country on doing workshops, but you also do deliver keynotes as well.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yep. So we want people to be able to do that. And, hopefully we are flying and that sort of thing, and we'll all be safe.
I hope so.
Definitely have our masks. We got these are like a regular. Every time I go to the store, I'm buying sanitizer and masks.
That's right.
Like, okay. That's what
I
we
just
gotta
ordered
do.
some masks online yesterday.
Yes, yes. The one thing I can't find are those Clorox wipes. So
I
I
know.
don't know what's up with that. I'm like,
Can't find
y'all
them.
just went to sleep or what? It's like, come on. Yeah. So anyway, but thank you so much, and you continue doing your good work, okay? And
All
reach out
right.
to me anytime you need anything, okay?
I sure will. Thank you for having me on, and be safe.
All righty. Take care.
All right.
Bye-bye.
Take care. Bye-bye.